Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into some news coming out of Guyana. If you're interested in this new cash grant program they're rolling out, you've come to the right place. We've got an article hot off the press from News Source Guyana, and we're going to break it all down for you. By the end of this deep dive, you'll know exactly what this grant is all about, and we'll even try to get into some of the potential impacts it could have.
Yeah, this is a pretty big development for sure. People are really talking about this both in Guyana and, well, everywhere, really.
It's definitely caught some attention. And speaking of attention grabbing, let's start with the big headline here. Not everyone's getting that cash grant before Christmas. That's right. VP Jagdeo announced a phased rollout plan, and it's got some people scratching their heads.
Yeah, but it makes sense when you think about it. I mean, this is a huge undertaking. A phased approach is probably the smartest way to go about it.
Right, you've got a point there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics here. Who's getting what and when?
Well, public servants and pensioners, they're first in line. The government's hoping to get those payments out before Christmas. The article actually uses the word hopefully, which is kind of interesting.
The good old government, hopefully.
Yeah.
It leaves things open to interpretation. Okay, but what about everyone else? Seems like they've got a bit of a wait ahead of them.
Yeah, that's right. Anyone who registers in time might see the grant in January. But for everyone else, they'll be waiting until after the 2025 budget passes, which they're projecting for February.
February 2025. That's a pretty big gap for some folks. Okay, so let's talk numbers. How much are we talking about here?
We're talking 100,000 Guyanese dollars, which is about 480 US dollars, give or take. Not exactly chump change, especially in the Guyanese context.
Definitely not. Now, how many people are they trying to reach with this initial payout?
The article says they're aiming for 300,000 people in that first round.
Wow, that's a lot of people. And to handle that, the Ministry of Finance has set a goal of processing, get this, 20,000 checks per day.
Yeah, ambitious, isn't it? And to hit that target, they're aiming for 10,000 registrations every day. Think about the logistics of that, especially in Guyana. This isn't just about handing out money. They're building a whole system here to make sure it gets to the right people.
That raises a good question. Is this delay just about logistics, or is there more to it?
Well, creating a database like that, it takes time, especially when you're dealing with this many people. Accuracy is really important here.
So what else is factoring into this timeline?
Funding. The rest of the money for this program, which they estimate to be around 30 billion Guyanese dollars, needs to be budgeted.
30 billion, that's a lot of money. But VP Jagdeo did say that this database they're building will make things easier for future grants. Seems like he's thinking long term.
Yeah, it's a smart move. Investing in a good system now will pay off in the future. And of course, there's the promise of a corruption-free system, which is always a big concern.
Transparency and accountability, those are crucial. All right, so we've covered the who, what, and when, but I think it's time we talk about the why.
Yeah, the why is where things get really interesting.
Tell me more.
This grant isn't just about providing relief, it's about investing in Guyana's future.
Now that's an interesting way to look at it. So how does this program fit into Guyana's development?
Okay, so for anyone who isn't familiar with Guyana's economy, they've had this huge oil boom recently. It's put them in a really unique position, but it comes with some challenges.
Like making sure that all this new wealth benefits everyone in Guyana.
Exactly. And that's where this cash grant program comes in. It's a way to provide direct support to the people who need it most.
So it's not just economics, it's about social equity too.
Absolutely. But to really understand the impact of this program, we need to go deeper. We need to look at the potential economic ripple effects.
Okay, so we know who's getting the grant and when they're getting it. Now let's talk about the why and how this program could impact Guyana's economy. What kind of effects are we talking about here?
We're talking about putting 30 billion Guyanese dollars right into the hands of people who are probably going to spend it right away. Think about what that could do.
Yeah, it's a ton of money going directly into the Guyanese economy. What could that mean for local businesses?
I mean, it could be huge for them. More demand for goods and services, maybe even new jobs and opportunities. It could really boost their bottom line.
So this isn't just about helping individuals, it's about stimulating growth across different sectors.
Exactly. But like with any big economic move, there are some potential downsides to think about too.
Ooh, that sounds ominous. What kind of downsides are we talking about?
Well, one thing that could happen is inflation. If supply can't keep up with the increased demand, prices could go up, especially for things that people need every day.
Right, that makes sense. If there's suddenly a lot more money out there, but not more stuff to buy, things could get out of balance.
Exactly. And that leads to another big question. How sustainable is this program in the long run? Is this just a one-time boost, or could it be the start of a better social safety net for Guyana?
That's a really good question. It'll be interesting to see if they try to make some parts of this program permanent. I mean, with all this new oil wealth, do you think Guyana could be a model for other developing countries?
It's definitely possible. In a way, this is like a test case for how to handle a sudden economic boom. Whether this grant program succeeds or fails, it'll have a big impact, not just on Guyana, but on other countries that are going through similar changes.
That's a fascinating thought. It's like Guyana is at this crucial moment, and the choices they make now will really shape their future.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of choices, it's important to remember that this isn't just about numbers and economic theories. This program will have a real impact on people's lives.
You're right. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture and forget about the human side of things.
For a lot of families, this could be a life-changing amount of money. It could be the difference between putting food on the table or not. It could mean access to healthcare, education, even starting a small business. There's so much potential here.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder that economic policy affects real people and the choices they make every day.
Right. And even policies with good intentions can have unintended consequences. That's something we should definitely talk more about.
For sure. But before we get into that, let's take a step back and recap what we've covered so far. We talked about the timeline, the logistics, the potential benefits, and the potential downsides. But are there any other consequences we haven't considered yet? Consequences that might not be so obvious. It's like we're looking at this program through a magnifying glass, you know? We've gone from the big picture stuff to the really fine details. But now we need to put on our thinking caps and consider those unforeseen consequences. The stuff that nobody expects.
Right, exactly. Because even with the best intentions, sometimes these big projects, they can have unintended consequences.
Okay, so what kind of unintended consequences could we be talking about here with this cash grant program?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is maybe a shift in dependency, you know? Like, if people start relying on these grants as their main source of income, it could discourage them from getting jobs or, trying to improve their own situation.
Right, that makes sense. You wouldn't want to accidentally create a system that makes people less self-sufficient.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the whole thing about market distortions. If all this new cash floods the market, but there isn't more stuff to buy, prices could go up, especially for basic necessities. And that would hurt the people who aren't getting the grant.
So it's about finding that balance, right? Helping people without messing up the whole system.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the social side of things either. Like, could this program create divisions between the people who get the grant and the people who don't? Could it lead to, resentment or even some kind of unrest? These are all things we need to think about.
Yeah, it's a reminder that these policy decisions, they affect real people's lives. It's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to keep an eye on things, to monitor how this program is working. If we see any unintended consequences popping up, we need to be ready to adapt and make changes.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. You got to stay flexible and be willing to adjust as you go.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where open communication comes in. We need to have honest conversations about this program, both the good and the bad. That's how we'll find solutions that really work for everyone.
Well, this has been quite a deep dive, wouldn't you say? We've covered a lot of ground here, from the basics to the really complex stuff. But as always, we want to leave you with something to think about.
So, knowing everything we've talked about today, what do you think the long-term impact of this cash grant program will be on Guyana?
Will it help the country prosper, or will it create new problems down the line? We encourage you to keep learning about this, to hear different perspectives, and form your own opinions.
And don't be afraid to share your thoughts with others. Let's keep this conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive, everyone.